Hi, I'm Elsa Hui. I'm a Christian psychologist from the Seattle area. This is part 2 of our series on emotional regulation. In part 1, we talked about God's priority for our lives. In the New Testament, the book of Mark 12, verse 30 says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength." The heart and the soul includes the emotions, which are a reflection of God Himself. God has emotions and has given us emotions, which enable us to connect with God and others. Then we covered 3 major emotions: sadness, anger, and anxiety, which are usually experienced along a continuum. I talked about emotions and how they often come in waves. And if you can just ride the emotional wave and think clearly and behave appropriately while waiting out the waves, you'll be okay. I shared about one very important tip on dealing with your emotions. This tip was to talk out whatever's bothering you with somebody you trust for support, perspective, and new ideas. Today, I'll be sharing a few more tips on regulating your emotions. I'll start with some preventative strategies and then go on to specific tips for specific emotions. Let's start with how to build up mental health that will help you handle your emotions successfully. You may have heard this saying, "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." This just means that if you can prevent problems from starting in the first place, you won't have to fix the problems later on. This is the same for overall well-being. If you can put yourself in a healthy place, you will be better able to deal with stressors in life as they come up. So there's 4 areas that you can examine and strengthen to help you stay healthy and to prevent emotions from getting out of balance, especially when life is busy or stressful or when unpredictable events turn everything upside down. Use your imagination and create a picture of a solid 4-legged chair. For this chair to be stable, it needs to have 4 legs which are equal in length and either thick wood or strong metal to hold up a lot of weight. For our purposes, imagine that each of these 4 legs are 1. The spiritual realm, 2. The physical realm, 3. The social realm, and 4. The emotional realm. Each leg is important and interconnected. Many of the tips I'll be sharing are common sense, easy to understand, will cost you nothing, but requires a little bit of effort to implement, which is why they're often ignored and overlooked. But remember, your main goal in all of this is to take care of yourself so you can serve God and serve others. I'll address each of these issues one at a time. So the first area to examine is your spiritual life. Just like the wise man who built his house upon the rock, we need to establish a firm foundation on God and His Word. Whatever our goals are in life, we need to stay close to God and to depend on Him for help so that we can accomplish His purposes in and through us. We accomplish this by doing the things we know we should do, such as praying without ceasing and reading the Bible to be in God's presence. We're also called to share God's love with others through sharing the gospel or giving of our time and money to minister to others inside and outside of the church. We're called to worship Him corporately, meaning in a group or a church setting. So these are spiritual disciplines and actions that put us in a place where God will be transforming us, healing us, and guiding us. God is our source of life and strength. We should also examine our physical well-being. We are a combination of body, mind, and spirit. Whatever happens to our bodies will affect our emotions and our faith. Do you ever get grumpy when you're hungry, as in hangry? And did you know that chronic pain is highly correlated with depression? These are just 2 examples of how our bodies can affect our mood and our outlook on life. Therefore, be diligent to take care of your body. Have a good sleep routine so you get enough rest. Be disciplined to get plenty of exercise. Be careful about what you eat. Limit your sugar, and don't smoke or use recreational drugs. These are all things your mother or your grandmother probably taught you, and she was right. These are healthy habits, and they're very important, not only because we're to be good stewards of the bodies that we've been given, but in order to take care of the things that affect our minds and our emotions and our spirit. Next on our list, let's examine your social life. Look at the condition of your relationships. Make sure you have healthy, balanced relationships. It's good to be mentored. Have some relationships where you are supported and you're on the receiving end, being trained and encouraged by a mentor, learning from wise teachers and leaders or church uncles and aunties. Have you ever had a mentor or a teacher or even a relative whom you could turn to for advice when you needed it? When I was just starting out in my career, I had a mentor who acted as my supervisor and later as a consultant. Whenever I had a tough question or felt unsure about my work, his encouragement kept me going, and his wisdom kept me from making major mistakes. His example has been an inspiration, and 25 years later, I'm still in touch with him and still so grateful for how God provided his example and encouragement to me. If you've never had this blessing, start praying and looking for someone to disciple you, someone you respect and could imitate, no matter what your age. Also, have some relationships where you are a mentor, where you provide support, where someone else is on the receiving end, where you are the mentor because you have much to offer younger people. It's a blessing to disciple someone else because God will use you and you will see this person grow and mature. It also keeps you on your toes because you have a responsibility to be a good example. And lastly, have some relationships where you're a friend, where there's a balanced giving and taking, where you can walk alongside someone who is your equal. Having a variety of give and take types of relationships will help you stay mentally healthy. And lastly, take care of yourself emotionally. Here's a chapter of American history. During the 1800s, covered wagons headed west, crossing the country over the plains, the deserts, and the mountains. Some groups or companies created rules that the Sabbath was to be the day of rest, except in cases of absolute necessity. There were religious as well as practical reasons. Those who observed the Sabbath, resting themselves and their teams, would get to California 20 days sooner than those who traveled 7 days a week. We're more effective when we pace ourselves, just as God instructed us to. And we also need to be able to pace ourselves emotionally. When emotions are just too intense, it's okay to distract yourself for a short time. So find ways to get a break, and afterwards come back to your stressor or to your problems. You'll be refreshed with a different perspective. Enjoy some music, have some fun, tell some jokes. Your brain and your heart need a break from time to time before coming back to the problem, and this helps you to keep going. Of course, don't overdo it, but do take a break from time to time to take care of yourself so that you can continue the work that God has called you to. Now we're going to shift gears and look at a few tips on how to deal with 3 major emotions, the ones that I talked about last time. So I'll talk about how to cope with depression, then anger, and lastly, anxiety. Let's start with sadness and depression. Did you know that depression has been called the common cold of mental health? That means depression is so prevalent and so widespread, it's like the common cold. Many people have some form of sadness because there's a lot of sad events in the world. So let me share with you some simple tips to cope with sadness or depression. There's growing interest and research on the science of happiness. Even if we feel heavy-hearted about life and past sad events, we can still create and experience some happy feelings to lift up our spirits. So here's tip number 1. Nurture healthy, loving relationships. Your relationship with God and with others can protect you from sadness or depression, or at least minimize the intensity. And healthy relationships will be a source of encouragement to you so that you can keep on keeping on. So nurture your relationships by spending lots of time with those you love and those who love you back. Take time and evaluate how you spend your time. Do you invest your time talking to God? Do you have a good mix of fun times and deeper sharing with your friends? Or do you spend a lot of your free time watching TV or playing games? Aim for lots of quality and quantity time with others, especially those you love. The more healthy relationships you have, the less risk you have for depression. And if you are sad, your friends will be the ones you will lean on for support. Here's tip number 2. Perform acts of kindness. When you're sad, doing good deeds helps you feel less out of control, less helpless, and you will feel better. Something as simple as smiling at the store clerk, or greeting a visitor at church, or blessing a friend with a cup of coffee will help you feel happier. Here's tip number 3. Be grateful. Did you know that having an attitude of gratitude can actually help you feel happier? If you count your blessings 3 times a day for 21 days, research shows that that can be as effective as an antidepressant medication. Now, if you eat 3 times a day and you have the habit of saying grace before you eat, you're already creating a foundation of happiness. If this isn't a regular habit yet, to say grace before eating, start today. When you thank God for your food, also take time to identify what else you're grateful for and tell God why you're grateful for that blessing. For example, aren't you grateful that you have eyes that work? Now think about why. And this is an important step to include. You're grateful for your eyes that see because there's so much beauty in the world to enjoy. Or you appreciate your eyes because having vision makes it very efficient to be able to cross the street. Counting your blessings, whether big or small, brings praise to God, but also helps you to feel better. And here is the 4th tip on coping with sadness. Have a good cry if you need to. Have you ever had food poisoning? If you have, you'd understand the sharp pain or nausea from having eaten food that you should not have eaten. And if you've ever vomited it out, you would know the sensation of great relief after getting it out of your system. Many people have the same experience with sad feelings. If you have a lot of sadness building up inside, you will feel much better if you can get it out of your system. If you're feeling sad, give yourself time to grieve and a chance to really cry it out and release it. It's like a wave of sadness. If it comes over you and you're in a place where you can cry, let that feeling in and then let it out. Now let's talk about anger. We all get angry at times. Whether it happens often or not, whether or not it's intense, here's some tips that you might try out. Number 1, count to 10. If you count to 10, you give yourself time to think about what you're about to do. Then you can avoid doing anything you will regret. Alternatively, do something to burn your energy off, whether it's to exercise, or take a long brisk walk, or jump up and down. You could even punch a mattress, or scream into a pillow, or massage away the tension. These will distract you temporarily and give you some time to calm down before dealing with the problem. Here's tip number 2. Speak carefully. Speak up and be assertive when it's necessary. But when you do speak, limit your words to observations, not accusations. If you can calmly describe the situation from your point of view, you may hear how silly you sound, or you may be able to present a good case by sticking to the facts. For example, if someone brushed past you and pushed into you with significant force, you could say, "Hey, you just bumped into me so hard that I almost lost my balance. Can you tell me what's going on?" So don't assume anything and don't react until you've assessed the situation. Maybe this person was just in a big rush because he was trying to catch the bus. Or maybe he was angry because you had bumped into him earlier, but you didn't even realize it. Either way, you can organize your thoughts and your responses more clearly. If you can spell out what you observed, it helps you understand yourself. It also helps others know what's making you angry. And be sure to avoid making one of the biggest mistakes we get tempted to do. Don't assume that you can read someone's mind and know what their motives and attitudes are. We tend to assume the worst. And even if our guesses might be accurate, the other person has every right to deny it because you cannot read their minds, nor can you prove it. So don't get into that trap. Instead, discuss objective, observable behaviors or tones of voice or words that were used and clarify before addressing the problem. Tip number 3, learn to forgive. Forgiving means letting go of your right to punish. In many cases, you may have a right to demand justice because it was a truly terrible thing that might have happened to you. But you may have to let it go and leave it in God's hands. Trust God to take care of the punishment, whether it's to put that requirement for punishment onto Jesus on the cross, if it's for a believer, or to take care of it on the judgment day. You can trust God to be just and to punish sin rightly. You may not be able to forget about the offense, and you may not be able to trust the offender if he's not trustworthy. But it does mean the punishment they probably deserve will be left in God's hands. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. I'll talk a little bit more about this in more detail in lesson number 5. Now let's turn our attention to dealing with anxiety. I'll start with some exercises that might be helpful. The first one is deep breathing. It's something that many people find helpful. I've heard that soldiers use deep breathing to relax themselves and to be able to fall asleep on command, regardless of their location or their time zone. Breathing works this way. When we inhale, our sympathetic nervous system is activated. It works like an alert system. It gets you ready to deal with life, stress, and even danger. It would help you run away from the tiger that is chasing you. On the other hand, breathing out or exhaling activates the parasympathetic nervous system, that part of your body that calms you down after you've escaped from the tiger. Under normal situations, when we breathe in and out equally, which balances out the alert system with a calming down system. Did you know you can intentionally activate the calming down system so you can temporarily make that stronger than the alert system? You can manipulate your body's system to calm down so you can reduce your anxiety through simple breathing techniques. Here's how you can do that. When you breathe in and you breathe out, extend the time that you exhale so it's a bit longer than the time that you inhale. Here's how I'll show you. I'll use my hand motion to signify the motion of air going in or out of your body. When you breathe in, breathe to 4 like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it to the count of 2, 1, 2, and then exhale to the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So try this with me for a couple of times. Ready? So inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, and exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, and exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can try this for 5 to 10 minutes until you feel more relaxed. Deep breathing in this way gives your body extra oxygen because often when we're anxious, our breathing becomes very shallow and we're short on oxygen. Deep breathing also gives your mind something to focus on, and deep breathing causes your body to calm down. You can do this on the bus, at your desk, at work, anywhere, and no one will even notice if you do it discreetly. This is one tool to help you control anxiety. Give it a try. Here's tip number 2. It's called muscle relaxation. It's another exercise that many people find helpful. Here's a demonstration. So you clench your fist while I count to 10. Let's give it a try. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Next, relax and shake it out. Then we repeat it. We'll do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Can you feel your muscles feeling warm or tingly? Are they also starting to feel a little tired? Did you know your brain is registering this sensation and noticing that it's the same sensation as when you're relaxed? You can put yourself in this tired and relaxed state, and your body will be even more relaxed, and your emotional responses will be less intense. Of course, most of us don't carry tension in our fists. It's just an easy way for demonstration purposes. So let's focus on the areas where you feel tension when you're anxious or even angry. Some people feel tension in their jaw or their neck or their shoulders or even their stomach. So wherever it is, tense it up and relax those muscles. If you carry tension in your neck, try this method to tire out your neck muscles. First, push into your hands this way, to the right, and then push to the left, and then push backwards into your hands or forward into your hand. You repeat this until your neck muscles are good and tired. If you tense up in your jaws, squeeze the jaw muscles and don't clench your teeth because you don't want to break them, but tense up and tire out the muscles in your jaws. If it's your shoulders that get tense, tire those out by squeezing your muscles and your shoulders towards the center and downward. Squeeze and relax and tire out those muscles. If it's your stomach, you can squeeze your tummy by squeeze it in or pushing it out, whichever feels best for you. So whichever muscle is tense, try for 5 to 10 minutes until you feel a difference in the muscles. See if you can tire out and relax your body. Here's tip number 3. There's a saying from Pastor Rick Warren: if you know how to worry, you know how to pray. It includes prayers of confession if you're fearful of and doubtful of God's love or power, or it could be prayers pleading with God for a certain outcome. But it could also be asking God for faith that God will hear you and care for you and that He will intervene. Or it could be praying the attributes and works of God from the past, in the Bible, or in your life. This will help you remember God's grace and His mercy. Philippians 4:6 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." Most of what I've talked about is helpful for most people, but occasionally there may be a need for more support like professional counseling or medication or special support groups and classes. If this is your case, consult a professional in the mental health field. Next, I'm going to share with you some ways to talk about your emotions and share it with others so that others can understand you a little bit better. One method is to use a rating scale from 1 to 10, 1 being low intensity and 10 being high intensity. So let me give you an example. A very excitable young girl was telling me with great flourish how upset she was. Her voice was trembly, her hand gestures were large and expressive, and her eyes were wide open. I asked on a scale of 1 to 10 how upset she was, and she told me 3. She looked very excited to me, but her own subjective experience of her emotions was not all that intense. It was only dramatic to others who were not as excitable. On the other hand, another person was sitting in my office, quite still, and her voice was very calm. And she was telling me about something painful that happened to her, and it made her feel very sad. I asked her on a scale of 1 to 10 how sad she was, and she told me 8. Outwardly, her body language and tone of voice was so subtle that I would have easily missed how significant this event was in her life. If she hadn't told me, it was 8 out of 10. So this scale is very useful in providing an understandable measurement of where you are emotionally. It can help others understand just how intensely you feel, even if you have a hard time expressing it, or if your outward actions don't always match up with your inward feelings. And if you ask your friends to rate their feelings from time to time, you can better understand their feelings as well. Another method of sharing emotions is by using imagery. There's a saying, "A picture tells 1,000 words." It means that there are messages communicated by images that skip over verbal explanation. By using images, you can convey messages in ways that address a number of ideas all at once. Even the emojis on your phone can emphasize different ideas and reactions. Did you know that there's research on the use of emojis? It confirms that these can enhance digital communication and connection by adding an emotional response. But we aren't limited to these simple faces or pictures. If you're the creative type, you can express yourself with a pencil and paper. For example, a little girl I knew drew a picture of a house. Then she added a window, and she put in that drawing a little girl in the window who was looking outside. Then she drew a tornado cloud all around the house. I don't think it's a coincidence that she had ADHD. And while she felt secure and loved in her home, her world felt out of control and chaotic. So here's another example. I worked with a teenager who drew a picture of herself sitting on the ground. In front of this image of herself, she placed a cactus plant. Then she drew a very interesting detail. It was her arms. They were wrapped tightly around the cactus plant. Ouch! Can you imagine those cactus spines poking into her arms and her chest, pricking into her skin? She explained that this was a picture of her and her depression, that she needed to embrace it because it was a part of what she was going through, but it was extremely painful. So these kids were able to express their feelings without the pressure of using words until after they got their feelings down on the paper. Afterwards, they were able to share and verbalize the most important parts of their drawing and connect it with their feelings and thoughts. It helped them to organize and clarify their thoughts and feelings. And on my end, I got a glimpse of what they were going through, so I was able to understand them better. Now, you might be thinking, I can't draw very well. But the point is, an image, whether it's an emoji or a drawing or a photograph, or simply describing a picture, are all useful ways to share your emotions and help others understand what you're going through. If you can connect in different ways, you'll feel less alone in this world and encouraged to keep living out life according to the purposes God has called you to. I hope these tips have been helpful for you as you continue your life journey of loving God and loving others. By taking care of your own emotions, you'll be better able to love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. Then you'll be able to also love others. I'll see you next time.